reasons to be near them. You simply exist in a way that does not orbit around them anymore. And something begins to stir in them. Something ancient and deeply uncomfortable. The slow, creeping, nauseating realization that this time might be different. This is when the first wave of narcissistic panic begins. Not rage yet, not manipulation yet, something quieter and more unsettling than that. A kind of existential vertigo, because the mirror that confirmed their existence just went dark. And without your reflection, they cannot quite see themselves anymore. Watch what happens next, because this is where their behavior becomes almost clinical in its predictability. Almost as if they are following a script written into their psychology long before they ever met you. The first thing they do is test, subtly, carefully. A random message, casual in tone, designed to seem like it means nothing. A memory they claim to have stumbled across. A detail about something you both shared, sent at a time when they calculated your defenses might be down. They are not reaching out because they miss you, at least not in the way a healthy person misses someone. They are reaching out because they need to confirm that they still have access to your emotional core. They need to know the door is still open, even if they have no intention of walking through it. If you respond with warmth, even a fraction of warmth, the relief they feel is immediate and intense. Not because they value you, but because the mirror lit up again, the fuel returned, the threat of irrelevance passed. They will not escalate into genuine reconnection. They will simply withdraw again, slightly satisfied, the anxiety quieted for a while, and the cycle begins to reassert itself. But if you respond with neutrality, or if you do not respond at all, something far more interesting happens. The second wave hits, and the second wave is different. This is no longer quiet vertigo. This is the beginning of real disturbance, because your non-reaction has communicated something their psyche cannot easily process. That you are not playing a game, that you are not waiting for them to notice your distance so you can punish them with it. That your silence is not a weapon aimed at them. It is simply where you now live, a place where they are no longer the center of your emotional world. And to a narcissist, that is not just a rejection. That is an annihilation. This is the part you need to stay with, because it reveals everything about how they operate. A narcissist does not fear your hate. They can metabolize your hate. Hate means you are still emotionally invested. Hate means they still matter to you, still occupy real estate inside your mind, still have the power to generate a response. What they cannot metabolize is your peace. Your peace tells them that you have moved to a place they cannot follow, a place where their opinion of you no longer determines your opinion of yourself. And that is the one place their control cannot reach. If you are watching this and something in your chest is shifting, something recognizing itself in these words, then you are exactly where you need to be. And there are thousands of people watching this right now who have been carrying the weight of someone else's dysfunction for so long they forgot what it felt like to be free. Subscribe to this channel if you are ready to keep going deeper, because the more you understand their psychology, the less power it has over you. Subscribe right now and become part of a community that is walking out of the dark together. Now here is where their behavior escalates into something that, if you do not know what you are looking at, can feel genuinely confusing. Because the narcissist who once discarded you, ignored you, made you feel invisible, suddenly becomes available, suddenly remembers your birthday, suddenly has a reason to be wherever you are, suddenly begins performing vulnerability in ways that feel almost convincing. They will tell people who know you both that they are worried about you, that you seem different, that they hope you are okay. Not because they are worried, but because this performance creates a narrative in which they are the caring one and you are the cold one. It subtly repositions them as the person reaching out, the person who still cares, which means they get to recast your indifference as cruelty. This is one of the most insidious things they do. When they cannot provoke a reaction from you directly, they begin working the social periphery. They plant seeds. Small comments to mutual friends, family members, colleagues. Nothing overt enough to be called out, just enough to make people slightly uncertain about you. Just enough to create small fires they hope will eventually force you to engage with them in order to defend yourself. Because the moment you engage, even in anger, the game is back on. The supply is flowing again. The mirror is lit. Do not take the bait. This is one of the hardest things you will ever do because the instinct to defend yourself is completely natural and completely human. But understand what is actually happening. Every time you feel the pull to explain yourself, to correct the record, to make people see the truth, you are feeling the old activation response that they spent months or years engineering in you. The feeling that you owe them your emotional energy, that their narrative deserves your counter-narrative, that silence means guilt. Silence does not mean guilt. Silence means you have left the arena. And the one thing a narcissist cannot survive is an audience that has walked out. Let us go deeper. Because there is a psychological phenomenon that happens inside the narcissist during this phase that most people never get to see. And understanding it will free you from the last chains still connecting you to them. When a narcissist loses control of your emotions, they do not simply feel sad the way a healthy person feels sad after a relationship ends. They experience something much more destabilizing, something closer to what psychologists describe as narcissistic injury, a wound to the very foundation of their constructed self-image. Remember, their identity is not built on anything internal. It is built on external confirmation. It is built on the belief that they are special, superior, uniquely powerful in their ability to affect the people around them. When you stop being affected, that belief system starts to crack. And the terror that lives underneath that crack is not grief. It is not loneliness, at least not in the way you experience loneliness. It is the terror of non-existence. The terror that without your reaction, without your need for them, they are somehow less real, less significant, less than. And that terror, when it reaches a certain pitch, becomes fury. This is the third wave, the rage. And it can come in many forms. Some narcissists become coldly vengeful. They escalate the smear campaign. They tell more people more damaging things. They attempt to professionally or socially isolate you. They use any leverage they still have, children, shared finances, mutual history, to try to force an interaction, any interaction, because even a fight is better than the void of your indifference. Other narcissists collapse inward. They become suddenly dramatically fragile. They reach out with messages so raw, so seemingly vulnerable, that you feel guilty for your peace. They will use their own pain as a weapon, not because the pain is false, the pain may be entirely real, but because they are wielding it as a tool to reestablish emotional access, to make you feel responsible for their suffering, to drag you back into the caretaker role where they know exactly how to manage you. And some narcissists do both. They oscillate between rage and collapse, between punishment and appeal, between coldness and desperate warmth, because they are throwing everything at the wall to see what cracks you open again. What they are looking for is the lever, the emotional trigger that still works on you, the thing that still makes you drop your boundaries and reach toward them. And if you have done the work, if you have truly arrived at genuine indifference rather than suppressed pain wearing indifference as a mask, they will not find it, because it is no longer there. Here is the truth that the world does not tell you often enough. Healing is not just personal, it is political. Every time a person walks away from a narcissist with their dignity intact and their emotional core unbreachable, they have won something that transcends their individual story. Because the narcissist's power is entirely dependent on your belief that you need them, on your belief that their approval makes you real, on your belief that their cruelty reflects something true about your worth. The moment you stop believing those things, not just intellectually, but in the deep, wordless place where your sense of self actually lives, their entire architecture of power over you collapses. Not slowly, all at once. like a building whose foundation has been removed. And what rises in its place inside you is something they never wanted you to find: sovereignty. The knowledge that your emotional world belongs to you and no one else. That your peace is not a reward they can grant or withhold. That your worth is not a verdict they have the authority to deliver. You become, in the truest psychological sense, ungovernable. And for someone who has spent years trying to govern you, that is the most devastating outcome imaginable. Think about what you have been through. Think about the nights you spent dismantling yourself, trying to understand why you were never enough. Think about how many times you contorted your emotions, your needs, your very sense of reality in an attempt to keep the peace, to avoid the cold silence, to earn back the warmth that always seemed just out of reach. Think about the version of you that apologized for things that were not your fault, that shrank themselves to make room for someone who was never going to make room for you. That version of you was not weak. That version of you was surviving something genuinely difficult. But you are no longer in survival mode. You are in emergence. And emergence looks exactly like what you are experiencing right now. The quieting of the desperate need to be understood by them. The dawning realization that their opinion of you was never an accurate reflection of who you are. The ability to hold the memory of what happened without being destroyed by it. The capacity to wish them nothing, not goodwill, not suffering, simply nothing, and mean it. Nothing is the most powerful thing you can give a narcissist. Nothing is what they cannot process, cannot weaponize, cannot survive. Nothing is the final frontier of your freedom. There is one more thing you need to understand about this process, because it changes the way you look at what happened to you entirely. The narcissist who is now scrambling, performing, raging, collapsing, doing everything in their psychological arsenal to recapture your attention and your emotional reactivity is not doing this because they love you. They may use that word. They may genuinely believe that word applies to what they feel. But what they are experiencing is not love for you. It is panic about themselves. It is the terror of the empty mirror. It is the unbearable confrontation with a self that, without external validation, they do not know how to hold. That is not your responsibility to fix. That was never your responsibility to fix. You cannot love someone into wholeness when they are using your love as a substitute for doing the work of becoming whole. You cannot sacrifice your psychological health on the altar of someone else's avoidance. And recognizing that, truly recognizing it at the cellular level, is not callousness. It is clarity. It is the most compassionate thing you can do, for yourself first, and ultimately even for them, because your refusal to enable their dysfunction is the closest thing to a wake-up call they will ever receive. Some of them will never wake up. Some of them will move on to the next source, the next mirror, the next person whose emotional world they can colonize. And that person will go through exactly what you went through. But that is not your burden to carry anymore. You have paid your dues in that particular school of pain. You have earned your graduation. And here is what graduation looks like. It looks like a Tuesday morning where you wake up and your first thought is not about them. It looks like a conversation with someone new where you are fully present instead of haunted. It looks like making a decision, small or enormous, based entirely on what you want and who you are, without the invisible filter of their potential judgment running in the background of your mind. It looks like silence that is not painful. It looks like solitude that feels like company. It looks like the slow, astonishing return of yourself to yourself. You are not the same person who entered that dynamic. You cannot be. What you went through carved you out and reshaped you in ways that are still revealing themselves. There are capacities in you now for discernment, for boundaries, for emotional intelligence that were forged in experiences that nearly broke you. Do not minimize what it took to arrive here. Do not rush past the magnitude of what you have survived and what you have become, because here is the final and most important truth of everything you have heard today. The moment you genuinely stopped caring about a narcissist's opinion of you, you did not lose something. You did not fail at the relationship. You did not give up or give in. You reclaimed something that was always yours and was taken from you so gradually you barely noticed it disappearing. You reclaimed the authorship of your own emotional life. The understanding that your feelings are yours to feel and not theirs to manage. That your peace is not a negotiation. That your worth is not conditional. That your story does not require their endorsement to be true. They are standing in an empty room right now, looking for a mirror that is no